Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out to our now second Insurtech SF event, which is now in Palo Alto to represent our full Silicon Valley. So we have some special guests sitting in the front, MC and Cheryl, who are actually the original co-founders of the SF group. So if it wasn't for them, we probably wouldn't all be here today. So it's great to be back after COVID, and I'm here with my co-host Hannah from Proven, so she's going to be closing it out for the evening. But it's really great to see everyone here, and I think for some of you I was talking to, it may be your first time at an event like this. So I would say if it's a little bit awkward, just push through the awkwardness. It'll only last until the drinks kick in. All right, so first thing is I want to thank our sponsors, because really this event couldn't be possible without them. Manchester Story, Avanta Ventures, which is the venture capital arm of CSAA or AAA Insurer, and both of them will be speaking. Lock Lord and Serious Point will also be speaking on the panel together, so you'll have the opportunity to see them all battling for who has the best wits about strategic investing. So this event today is part of a broader array of events that Insurtech New York and Insurtech SF run. And really the idea behind it is that we want to give opportunities for the Insurtech community to be engaged year round. So it's not just about doing this single event, but it's about keeping everyone in the community together to really create opportunities. And what we've found is when people get together, opportunities are created. And it's not just in New York, it's not just in San Francisco. Andrew, who's in the back, runs Insurtech Ohio and puts together events there. So I think when people get together, exciting things happen. So I think we're here to put that together. But if you guys want to help and support us, always let us know. So there's a couple events that I want to highlight that I'm really excited for. So coming up next in New York, for those of you who have come from the East Coast, we have an event coming up on AI and automation. So we're really going to dig into a lot of those concepts behind what makes AI work, and also from the life and health side, how do you actually use that data for longevity? And then for those of you who are investors and founders in the room, which I've looked at the attendee list and it's almost 70% of you, we have a special event that will actually be fun. So we did an event where we went out to Park City, and that was a huge hit. So we figured, why don't we do another event outside? So we're going to be doing an event in Santa Fe, New Mexico called Insurtech Rapids. We're working with Insurtech Hartford on that, and it will be a day of educational content, really digging into topics and having some of those uncomfortable discussions between founders and investors. And then you can hash it out in the water on Whitewater Rapids on the Rio Grande. So just in case a little aggression bubbles up there. So that's all this year, and then of course our big event next year, 2023, will be focused on competing on collaboration in New York City. So our agenda for tonight, we talked about welcomes. We're a little bit back on time, but we'll take a little bit away from the break since you got some networking in early. But I'm going to call up the first panelist in a moment, which will talk about attracting capital to pre-seed and seed stage deals, which has been an area that I think there's a lot of opportunity in. We're going to go to a break, and then from there we're going to invite back some of our sponsors that are going to share their perspective on what it means to be a strategic CVC, and then we'll get back to networking so you guys can enjoy the rest of the conversations that got cut off. So if I can ask my panelists to come up. First is MC, as you know, one of the original co-founders of Insurtech SF-SV. She's a principal at Northwestern Future Ventures, focused on early stage Insurtech and FinTech startups. Prior to Northwestern, MC was the scouting manager for State Farm Labs, and she started her career as a commercial underwriter and catastrophe modeler. Next is Gopi Rankin. Gopi is the founding partner of Sure Ventures and the host of the Sure Shot podcast, which if you haven't listened to, it's definitely worth it. He has some really great interviews up there. But he invests with the mission to enable peace of mind. And previously, Gopi could also have been on the second panel because he's been in corporate venture at USAA and Intel. Next is Eddie, who's the managing director at Generator. Eddie also started his career in corporate venture in Berlin as a founding team member of Alliance Life Ventures. And then is Yoshi, who's the deputy head of Silicon Valley for Tokyo Marine for their innovation group. He's held a variety of roles across US, Japan, and Singapore in business development, actuary, and underwriting functions. And I will be your moderator for this panel. So thank you, panelists. So I think we'll let the stage be set by Gopi, since he's really been on both sides of this, from the corporate side and now as a solo GP fund has really had a strong perspective. So Gopi, I think the best way to start one of these conversations is with the what's hot, what's not discussion. So why don't we start you off with what's hot? So pre-seed investing is really powerful because the trends that are happening today in pre-seed are going to dictate the next 5 to 10 years of the industry. So what do you think is hot? Are you excited about Web 3.0? Have you gotten some intelligent automation pitches recently? Or is it that crypto Insurtech that got licensed in Bermuda that caught your eye?
Do you have a mic?
Yeah, the mics are all behind you.
David, you will want to turn that off so it's not good for the
Yes.
Oh.
Just turn the knob in the front. There's a black. Here.
Thanks for,
Should be on.
it's on. Okay. Thanks for taking the spotlight off of me. What's hot and what's not? That's the question. I try to evade that question. The reason is that when I started investing in Insurtech in 2014, I was the weird guy that dabbled in this space. Before the word was even popular, and I like that. I like being the weird guy looking at things that no one else is looking at. Now that we have like 70 people, and I worry that this is hot, this is really hot, and I need to look for the next thing where no one's there. So, and the way I do that is not looking at the topic itself, but by focusing on the entrepreneurs. I like talking to entrepreneurs, building things that are quirky, that other people do not understand, and I take pride in the fact that I can be an early believer. That's what drives me, that's what excites me. So I'm talking to various types of entrepreneurs. I have boy Mill here. So when he talked to me about how Insurtech or insurance world is stuck in Stone Age, how regular processes and procedures that we follow in the rest of the world, especially in tech, like for example, if you were to build software, you would use agile methodology, so very well known. And there's a way to follow that. There's a structure to that. If you were to start an MGA, it's confusing and complicated. It takes months, sometimes even a year or 2 years to launch a new MGA product. So his idea was like, I'm going to take this tech methodology of agile and use the same kind of process in Launcher and help new MGAs launch. Did I say that right? Pretty good. Yeah. So that's the, he says it much better. But when someone like that says, I got something new and it's different, it doesn't exist in the world today, I get really excited. So what's hot for me is those kind of conversations. There are a lot of distribution in insurance, and there are many waves like that, new business models, usage-based insurance, various themes like that that come up. We can talk about that. But what is really hot for me is unusual conversations, entrepreneurs with ideas that I've not heard before. That's what excites me.
All right, so I think we have a roadmap. Whoever can come up with the most unusual conversation will get Gopi's checkbook. So Eddie, I know Generator has been an accelerator for a while. Insurtech is one of the verticals. I know you have several other verticals kind of out of the Wisconsin banner. So do you think that accelerators are the place to find what's hot, and how do you guys think about discovering those trends?
Yeah, great question. So I think without a doubt, accelerators, just based on their focus of extremely early stage companies and referrals within our large network, we're able to see a lot of some of those ideas that can be hard to understand. Some of those ideas that are totally new, and we're in a position to accept those founders. I think one of the things that accelerators do really well is that they open the doors for many different people, and they're very accessible. And that presents a platform for some of these ideas and discussions to be welcomed. So I think because of that, and because of the investment that follows on to some of these wild conversations and smaller cohorts, we also though really focus on how can we better than add value to these founders, which is introducing them to investors that might want to take a look at them. And I think this is incredibly important. When we say, you know, accelerators, what role do they really play in facilitating investment? And could they potentially be crowding out other VCs? I think it's the total opposite. I think that accelerators facilitate and focus on creating introductions and opportunities for both the founders and the VCs. And even if VCs, for example, might not want to look at a specific accelerator, or they say we're not interested in it, it doesn't really matter, because there's so many Insurtech VCs out there, or so many Insurtech accelerators out there now, so many different events, and they're probably in some way networked with somebody who has access to these accelerator companies. So I think that it plays a really important role, specifically, again, focus on earlier companies.
Yeah, can I make a comment? Yeah, I think the accelerator have a lot of a benefit, provides a lot of benefit for us. One of the the institutional investors. Actually, as David mentioned, we got a lot of key trends, and we also what is going on in the United States, and how much that kind of a movement will be impact on the industry, and also that kind of things we can also prepare for what is going on in the future, what kind of a countermeasure to be addressed in the future. So I think we can get a lot of insight, and we can prepare for the next future. And also we got a lot of meetup and meet a lot of people we can interact with VC and startups, and even if we are thinking of this is the right way, but we are not sure how much there is accuracy or not. So that I think that we can also, through the interaction with the people, we can adjust the direction. What is the right thing to do? That's also I'm very interested in, and also got a lot of insights from the accelerator.
Yeah, so it seems like from Eddie's perspective that it really gives you like a starting point, and maybe if Yoshi was to kind of summarize it a little bit, is also changing direction. If you see a trend and you adapt to it, you can kind of validate that at the accelerators. So I don't think the what's hot discussion could be complete without the what's not. So MC, what do you think are the areas that are most ignored and maybe should be ignored? Is it claims? Is it benefits?
It's funny, Gopi gave such a diplomatic answer, and in my head, all I could think was like, wow, I have like a running what's hot, what's not list going on constantly. I think in terms of areas being ignored, it's really like the industry itself has evolved in a lot of ways, and that investors, VCs, accelerators, everyone's become a lot more sophisticated in their knowledge about how complicated the industry is. So anything you can do to de-risk is a bad pun, but like anything you can do to de-risk like your problem area and really show that you have the knowledge makes it interesting. And then I think the second ignored area is like alternative revenue streams, not solely depending on the insurance industry, to show that you have traction, insights, everything else makes it more interesting.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's a little bit diplomatic here. I'd love to hear some of these what's not, but maybe after a couple drinks. So,
Just don't follow any VCs, because they're paid to be wrong 90% of the time.
I think I'll have to watch your returns to see if that 90% comes true, Gopi.
10% of the time when they are right, they are very, very so that compensates for all the losses.
Great, power law. So to really get into the topic, the heart of it, is we are thinking about attracting more investors to the pre-seed and seed world. And of course, you can definitely participate in accelerators, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're investing in the future directly. So what we've seen over time is there's been a migration. Maybe in 2015, when we all came here and got started in this Insurtech frenzy, there was a lot of investment in pre-seed and seed because that's all that was there. But because of the success of a lot of investors, we've migrated upstream to Series A and Series B, and I think most of you guys sitting here that are investors are Series A and later investors. So I think really maybe we'll have MC get this started, because I know you guys are called Future Ventures. What do you think has attracted you to some of the earlier stages, and why do you think some of your peers are staying in the later stages?
So we've actually done a lot more seed deals the last 2 years, I think reflective of where the market is, and also because we found really interesting companies that we wanted to learn from, and so we were able to lean into the strategic insights piece more than anything else to justify the investment. Like Hello Divorce is one we've done, and it streamlines the entire divorce process, and people are like, what is a mutual life insurance company doing with divorce? And it turns out it's one of the prime financial milestones of someone's life when they're most motivated to work with a financial advisor to purchase life insurance. So that was something that was compelling to us. So I think if you build a really interesting story around an earlier stage investment that stands out, or a new product, or something different, we're willing to take a chance. In terms of everything else, I think you're gonna have traction, you're gonna have to have a really good answer to every single why me question, in the sense of you have a lot of competition out there, and especially with the public markets these days, there's a lot of insights going around what works and what doesn't if you start in Insurtech, and you really have to have a good answer for everything.
Sounds like storytelling is one of the pieces. So Yoshi, I know you guys just announced your fund, and it includes pre-seed. So curious the thinking, what was the story behind the scenes that you got your kind of board behind investing in pre-seed?
Yeah, so our sweet spot is yes, seed and sometimes Series A, and also sometimes in the pre-seed. But I think a lot of insurance and CVCs are a bit worried about the current insurance market trend. It's a downside, and they are more a bit conservative, and to have more realistic and more practical solution. So that's the things I think they are more moving to the later stage. But for Tokyo Marine, we are more engaged in support the earlier stage, like a pre-seed and seed, startups. This is because I think a lot of startups, like a seed, they do have a good idea, and they have a nimble development, and also they do have a customer-centric UX approach. So I think that is very exciting for us, and that's the reason that Tokyo Marine would like to more engaged in and support. That's our mentality, and that's the reason we are currently more tackle with these kind of startups right now.
Yeah, well, hopefully a few more people can announce moving into sometimes pre-seed and not never pre-seed. So I know, Gopi, one of the challenges of going into pre-seed is that you need to cut smaller check sizes, right? And if you have a $100 million fund or a $400 million fund, doing something less than 2 to 3 million is kind of impractical. But on the flip side, if you're a founder and you're trying to be capital efficient, if the largest check that you can get is bigger than the round that you're trying to raise, or the smallest check that you want is not available from the investors that you want, then there's kind of a conflict there because you have to ultimately be more aggressive and spend more money. So, Gopi, do you think the move to larger check sizes from larger funds is helpful to founders, or it's pigeonholing founders to having to be more aggressive than they feel comfortable?
You want it behind the scenes, so I'll give you a thought process on what happens inside the mind of a VC. Someone who starts a small fund, makes a bunch of investments, works really well, and they say, well, you know, I'm doing all the hard work, and then handing it over to the later stage VC firms who seem to be reaping all the profits. So what am I going to do? I'm going to raise a bigger fund. And now I will invest in later stages also. Okay, so that's one story. In the later stage VC firms, they raise a very big fund, and they invest in Series B and later stages, and they see that, you know, the risk is pretty much the same at Series A or even seed. And I look at the seed stage investors, they're generating massive profits. They're like 10x, 100x up, while we're up like 2x, 3x only. So let's go invest in the seed stage so we can access all these companies. We're fighting at the Series B stage to get to these companies. Why don't we get to them sooner and we'll make more money? So the large later stage firms are like, they go downstream or up, whatever the upstream, downstream is. They go down to the earlier stages and they try to get those companies. But the problem is when multi-stage companies, and I'm watching you, Yoshi, see what happens, because it takes time to prove how all of this plays out. When a later stage firm starts investing at seed stage or pre-seed stage, I worry a lot because it's an option bet for them. It's an option bet, which means that I'll just throw some money, let's see what happens. If they become big, that's when I'm going to write the big check. Right? That's a problem for the entrepreneur because if they don't show up at the later stage, they are screwed. It's impossible to raise the later stage round of funding. I'm not saying that all funds are like that. Some funds have the right approach to understanding how multi-stage investing works. So as a founder, you're thinking about, is this a partner that's good for the long term, for the journey of the company? Some multi-stage funds like Yoshi's can turn into that. They've had a later stage fund for a long time and they've done well, but this pre-seed fund, seed stage fund is new, so I'm watching to see if they're going to behave. But as a founder, that's the thought that you want to have in mind. Right? Is this a partner that I want on board for the long term? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it sounds like, Yoshi, you're show and tell for tonight.
I think especially for the, one of the insurance CVCs, I think, we have to be a bit patient in terms of to enjoying the more strategic return. I mean, the Tokyo Marine, we launched our own CVC partnering with the Will, and we are currently more exploring the earlier stage with three principles we call. The one is, strategic is a more future collaboration in 3 to 5 years. Not that we don't expect any quick win. And that's the more mid or longer term strategic collaboration. Second is, of course, we are more looking at the positive side instead of looking at the negative side. Of course, the earlier stage, they are have a nimble development. They can make up as soon as possible. So that we are more looking at the positive side, what it could be the cutting edge, and that kind of scalability is one of the also the important thing. The thirdly, it's novel, whether it's more unique or whether it is the area we have not yet cultivated. So we also cultivate that kind of things, and that's the reason we are more getting to the more adjacent spaces rather than the Insurtech space. So mobility, healthcare, cybersecurity, deep tech, we are more diving into that spaces as well, and we are more engaged in try to support the startups, so that we value the more sustainable relationship and also open culture minded, and also the co-creation, meaning a lot of startups, especially the earlier stage, they don't have a matured product or services, so that we can collaborate with them and co-create and co-develop together with the startups, and that's the development is also what we are exploring right now. That's what I can say.
When my daughter was born, one of my founders came to the hospital to deliver some food at midnight. That never happened when I served on Series A, Series B boards. None of them did that. The relationship that I have with every founder, when I connected with them when they were nobody at pre-seed and seed stage, is very, very fulfilling. That's why I write smaller checks, and I love what I do.
Yeah, so I think you can have someone to visit you in the hospital and a noble goal if you start earlier, so a big selling point. But I don't think that our discussion on attracting people to the earlier stages could be complete without some of you in the room, which I know keep to themselves, but the angel investors. So Eddie, I know that some angel investors are involved in Generator, and so far there has been no formally announced angel investment group that's specifically for Insurtech. So I guess, Eddie, my question for you is why, and do you think we need it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that part of the answer to that is built in a lot of the programming of the different accelerators. If you look, for example, at the Generator accelerators, which are 12 weeks, the last 3 weeks are dedicated entirely to creating access for angel groups, high net worth individuals, and VCs that could be interested in meeting the cohort, right? So what I'm trying to say is that we're giving them avenues to success. We're giving them avenues to access. Generator is not the only accelerator doing that. And then we also have events like this. We also have, different types of meetups, conferences, networking, etc. So I think that because there are so many viable options for early stage investors, individuals, groups, etc., to work and get access to these companies, it makes sense that perhaps that's filling that void. The other thing too, I was thinking about this earlier, is as an angel group, a lot of these people might have full-time jobs. They don't necessarily have the time in order to really get together, discuss the market in its entirety, kind of take a filtered approach down all the way through. And perhaps they're also using some of these accelerators or networking events or people on panels to help sort of sift through, do a bit of filtering to help them get access to, interesting people.
Yeah, I think it's good to know that for those of you that have stepped up to the plate and want to step up to the plate, there's places where you can discover the right companies, and I think there's a lot of options, so definitely accelerators are one way, but I think coming here is another way for sure. So for our kind of last couple questions, I think there's some things that have been bubbling on a lot of people's minds, mostly in their 401ks as well. So thinking forward, based off of this market correction we have, it'd be interesting to see the perspective on when's that going to hit venture, when's that going to hit Insurtech for the non-public companies. So I guess, Gopi, I'd be curious your perspective on how you think that's going to affect investing in the next 12 to 24 months.
I wish I had the answer. When public market changes like what we're seeing now happens, it affects people in different ways. If you are a pre-IPO investor, you're gonna get a heart attack. Like, this is crazy market right now. If you are a Series B, Series C investor, the comps that you are looking at, you're like salivating over deals because you can now negotiate much better with the entrepreneur and show them that the public comps have changed, therefore we need to change the valuation of the round now, and the founders are like, all right, I get it, this is reality. And if you go further down, then the public market impact is not as relevant. Principles matter. Principles of how to build a business, how to build a team, how to think about long term, what's the vision of the company, what product to build, are we really solving a problem, where does revenue come from, is it sustainable revenue, how much is it recurring, and what's the churn. All of those questions are important, and none of those things are directly connected to the public market today. So the world I live in, I'm like living in the bottom of the ocean, where all the surfing stuff happens at the top, and I barely see any of that. And I shouldn't. I'm looking at how to build things with a strong foundation, and none of those principles change over time. So I'm I'm kind of immune to what's happening in the market. I'm watching it closely to see what I can learn, because the companies that I'm investing in 7 or 8 years from now will look like that. So we don't make the same mistakes some other companies made with like horrible unit economics, going IPO too soon. Can we build those things the right way from the beginning so that we don't have to course correct and make massive changes downstream? So those are the things that I'm watching for.
Yeah, definitely like the principled approach. So final question is for those of you in the room that were maybe persuaded by the panelists that you could start to invest earlier stage. I think we'll go and ask everyone what piece of advice, single piece of advice you have for those in the room that are thinking about it. So I think MC, you want to start us off?
For early stage investing?
Yeah.
I think talk to Gopi, it sounds like. If you, Gopi's been throwing shade left and right too, so. I think for all the reasons Gopi said, do your homework and then also like build that relationship with the founders, but also talk to people in this room to de-risk the idea. I'm saying this again, but especially in Insurtech, it's a really tough market. I think I'm not jaded, but like when a founder, actually someone who we've actually both invested in a couple years back, he's like, I want to be an Insurtech company. And I was like, why? Like, find a way to get excited, find a differentiator, and then just go from there.
So the question is, what's the advice for early stage investors?
People who want to move to early stage.
They want to move to early stage and invest. Become friends with VCs like me who actively invest in that stage. Because that's the game that I play. I wake up in the morning and be ready to prepare to play that game. So it's very helpful to get the gossip, get the insights on what's really happening and what really matters, all the trends that are true today. Those pieces of information, that's what I thrive on. So anybody who spends time with me, like I rely quite a bit with MC because she's one of the few experts. She was an underwriter before she became a VC. There are not many of those in the world. So she's super knowledgeable about the insurance world and she understands the startup world. That's why I spend. So I've curated a collection of people, angel investors and many others, where I spend a lot of time to learn how to do the right thing. And spending time with people like me and others, I'm not the only one. Like there are many good VCs out there who do the work that like the way I do. And spending time with them will help you understand how to be good at this stage. This is what I specialize in.
Well, so nice, Gopi.
Eddie?
Really echoing what Gopi and MC mentioned about talking. Have your idea. Think hard about what you find interesting and bring it up and test it. Talk with others about it. Bring it up. And I think that there are many different avenues where you can create those discussions. Events like the one that we're at right now. You're not the only one that's interested in it, right? So let's talk about it. Don't be afraid. Talk about something silly, right? Gopi likes wild ideas, so it's good. But no, talk about it, participate, and I think that it'll go a long way. And I think also the other thing to keep in mind is that at the really early stage, you're investing in people, you're investing in teams, ideas. And my piece of advice for that is find a founder who's entering in insurance intentionally. Whether that be some sort of reason of they solved a problem in a different space, they've identified one in insurance, and they're intentionally trying to solve it now. And I think that intention for me is very important.
All right, Yoshi, close us out.
Yeah, I can say that no hesitation to invest in as long as he or she does the right things to be able to solve the social problem. And definitely try to find out the business-driven people as well as the more tech-driven, people, so that also the team building is also the most important component for me to invest in. So that's the thing.
And listen to my podcast.
Sounds like you have a bunch of new subscribers today. So I want to thank all of our panelists, and we're going to move into a break, which will go till roughly 6:40.